What's up, everybody, and welcome to my Premier League predictions for the 2025 and 2026 season. And the predictions from bottom of the league up to the top of the league will be on this video. What's up, everybody, and welcome to my Premier League predictions for the 2025 and 2026 season. And the predictions from bottom of the league up to the top of the league will be on this video. My official predictions of the Premier League. I've done it every single year before the season begins. Who I think will be safe, who will be in mid-table, who's going to be in the Champions League as well positions by the end of the season, and also who could win the Premiership is also the major talking point in this Premier League predictions. And we'll start things first at the bottom end of the table, and I'm going to work my way up from bottom up to first on which teams I think will be safe and also could be getting relegated, and also who can get Champions League by the end of this season. Let's get to the video. And my first team that I'm predicting to be bottom and relegated back down to the Championship, I'm going for Burnley very easily, I think, because, you know, since Sean Dyche left Burnley way back in 2022, they've not been themselves. They've always been a team went down, go straight back up, go straight back down, then go straight back up. Vincent Kompany was manager the last time that Burnley was in the Premiership, and now he's manager for Bayern Munich now. And they've got Scotty Parker. The guy is a real specialist in the Championship on bringing teams back into the Premier League. He's done that with Fulham, he's done that with Burnley, and also he's done that a few years back with Bournemouth as well. So he's got a good calibre in terms of bringing teams back into the Premier League. But when it comes down to the Premier League, Scott Parker fails and struggles in terms of, let's say, keeping teams in the league. And especially was sacked after that 9-0 defeat against Liverpool when he was manager at Burnley at the time. His last ever appearance as gaffer for a Premiership team. But he's now manager for Burnley, and Burnley have made some real business in the transfer market. You know, he signed Kyle Walker, a major topic, the best right-backs in the England national team. I know he's getting on a little bit now. He's 34 years of age. His pace is dropping the least now, and that's why Pep Guardiola hasn't really picked him in his team, and that's why he was sent on loan to AC Milan. But now, in the summer transfer window, Burnley snapped a deal to buy an experienced Premier League right-back of Kyle Walker. Very, very, very good signing indeed for Burnley. Also as well, the striker from Chelsea, not really getting any game time at Chelsea, but he was a very good major striker he was for Southampton a few years back. Armando Broja, Albanian striker, he signed obviously for 10 million, a permanent signing from Chelsea. Not really get anything from Chelsea, not playing enough games for Chelsea, of course. And he's also a top striker. He did quite well at Southampton when they were in the Premier League a few years back. So that's also a decent signing. Also, Axel Tuanzebe. He had some, let's say, couple of appearances in the Premier League. Played for Villa. Obviously played for Man United as well. Not really getting enough game time at Man United, but he's a little bit experienced as well to try and prove himself for the Burnley team. And also signed Jadon Anthony from Bournemouth, a very good, let's say, left winger. He scored a few goals and made some, let's say, assists for Bournemouth. During last season, the season before, and he signs also for Burnley. And also Marcus Edwards, former Spurs player, but he also played in Portugal for Victoria, and then he left that team to join Sporting Lisbon. And he established himself quite well, actually, abroad in Portugal. And now he comes back to his land or his country. He obviously represents England and playing for Burnley in the Premiership. And that's a decent signing for Scotty Parker. The biggest problem that Burnley have faced, of course, is a goalkeeping situation. They sold James Trafford, a top goalkeeper, for Burnley during the Championship season last year, and he was a decent goalkeeper, of course, and that's why a lot of teams were flirting to trying to buy him from Burnley. But his replacement is Martin Dubravka, obviously Newcastle United goalkeeper, and he also played on loan for Man United. Not any appearances for Man United, excuse me, and he signs to replace by James Trafford as a signing for Burnley Football Club. But I don't see any confidence that Burnley are going to be safe, despite them signing these players in the transfer market. Burnley are not the team as Burnley thought they would be. They're not the team as they were under Sean Dyche when they, stayed up, the skin of their teeth, punched them above their weight under Sean Dyche. It's a new team, this is. Unless they actually get Sean Dyche during this season. Imagine if Scott Parker gets sacked and they bring back Sean Dyche. That might be a chance that Burnley might be safe, like he has done when he was a Burnley manager in the past. That could be a prediction that could be during this season. But in terms of what I think about this team, about Burnley without Sean Dyche, and also having Scott Parker not had any experience, any good experience as manager in the Premiership, always bring teams up and then bring teams down. So I think that's easy for me to put Burnley bottom of the Premiership in my opinion. So I'm going last, Burnley, for my prediction. And my team will predict to come 19th in the Premier League. And you guys are going to be very shocked about this, who I think will finish 19th in the Premier League. This team has been in the Premier League now for a few seasons, and they always stay in the league, and they've done well under this manager of Thomas Frank, who actually left and jumped ship from Brentford to join Spurs. And you know who I'm talking about to be the team to be relegated with Burnley during this prediction. I'm going Brentford. Well, Brentford's in big trouble. Big trouble. I know that Brentford's identity as a football club, they always get unknown managers when they were in the Championship and that. And let's say inexperienced coaches they actually bring through the ranks, and then they end up being successful, like what Thomas Frank did at Brentford. They're going through that model. The ownership's a bit more, they go through data analysts, they go more data-y, they go for, in terms of, like Brighton, for example. Brighton's the exact same example of that. But I feel that Brentford have lost their identity quite a lot, I think, during this transfer market, and also especially losing Thomas Frank and bringing in Keith Andrews as the manager. We'll get back to him in a minute, but setting these players, Brian Abremo leaving to join Manchester United, Christian Norgard joined Arsenal, for example, Ben Mee, free agent, goalkeeper as well, Mark Flecken is now gone to Bayern Leverkusen. Big losses for Brentford. Even Wissa could be leaving. He's actually wanting to leave Brentford. He's actually put a transfer request of him leaving Brentford. Another top striker, Wissa, to leave Brentford could happen also. And they've lost their identity as a football team. Don't get me wrong, this team might be, do not underestimate this squad of Brentford, despite, them losing all these players, because Brentford have done quite well in some transfer business, of course. Jordan Henderson, a key central midfielder. I know he's very old now, 35 years of age, but he's got a lot of experience, like he did at Liverpool when he won them the league, and also he'd been at Liverpool for so many years as well. Will give Brentford a lot of experience as well, especially, and also their goalkeeper as well. They signed from Liverpool as well, Kelia. Is it Kelia? The Irish goalkeeper. Also, Liverpool didn't really give him enough game time, but he's a promising goalkeeper. I've seen him a few times, obviously making some appearances as goalkeeper, and made some, saves he's made for Liverpool in terms of his appearances as a Liverpool goalkeeper. But he signs now for Brentford Football Club. Will be this big signing, of course, by having him to replace Mark Flecken, who left to go to Bayern Leverkusen. But I do see that Amari Hutchinson could be going to Brentford. There's talks about him leaving Ipswich to go and join Brentford. That could be a good signing for Brentford to try and get some younger players through. But I don't think that Brentford... I think Brentford with Keith Andrews is the talking point why I think that Brentford will be relegated this season. 4 seasons in the Premiership, very well under Thomas Frank, but Keith Andrews, alright, a set-piece coach as manager, or set-piece coach to turn into a manager for Brentford is a massive gamble, I think. But I feel Brentford go for a different way of how they structure their football club. They more have a DNA, of course, on getting unknown managers. The data helps them in terms of, rather than spending a lot of money on an experienced manager to come to Brentford. They go for one of their own coaching staff to take over and try and keep to that model as Brentford are used to through the years. You know, you lose players, you bring players. You lose managers like Dean Smith, for example, left Brentford to go to Villa a few years back, and then Thomas Frank took over, and he was a little bit very unknown for Brentford, and then he left now to join Spurs. Now we've got Keith Andrews, might even be as successful like those two previous managers for Brentford. But this is the Premier League we're talking about. This is the big leagues, and you know, if you're not experienced enough as a manager, then you're going to be in big trouble. Big trouble. Especially like Brentford have got, let's say, a smaller budget comparison to teams above them. So that put Brentford in a very weaker and a vulnerable position to make my prediction as Brentford to join Burnley to play in the Championship for next season. So I'm going to go 19th, Brentford. And the team will be the final three to be joined by Burnley and Brentford in the Championship for next season. I'm going for Wolverhampton Wanderers. A big shock, I think, for, let's say, the traditional way the last few seasons, having the newly promoted clubs get to the Premier League and end up getting relegated. I don't think this season is going to happen, I don't think. I think there's going to be two teams that have been in the Premier League for a little while, and they'll end up being that bottom three going into match day 38 of the Premiership. And Wolves is one of those teams will do it, I think, because their transfer business, you know, they haven't really signed any, let's say, experienced players in the team. You know, they brought in a player from AZ Alkmaar. Is he good enough for the Premier League? That's the question. Left back as well. A striker they signed, Larsson, and that's actually a permanent signing, actually, Larsson. He actually played for Wolves last season, and he actually contributed quite well for the Wolves team, and actually got a permanent signing from him to join, obviously, Wolves in a permanent deal as the player for Wolves going forward, of course. And that is a decent, obviously, signing for Wolverhampton Wanderers to have him as one of the players will join the Wolves team. But they've lost players, Wolves. They've lost, you know, Chunner is left, obviously, Wolves to join Manchester United for 62 million and have not spent any money whatsoever on any experienced players to join Wolves. And I think Wolves are going to be in big trouble here. They've sold the Algerian left-back, Al Nouri, to Manchester City as well for 31 million. And also sold Consejo Gudez to Rio Sociedad for 3 million. And that's a big losses for the Wolves team. And that's made me feel that it ain't going to be like Leeds, Sunderland and Burnley going down, like boring, like Championship, up, down. Ain't going to be like that anymore. I think they're going to be two teams have been in the Premier League for a little while now, will be relegated. And I think Wolves and Brentford are those two teams will do it. In terms of lack of transfers, the lack of spending, I think that Wolves are in a little bit of trouble. Forget about the form they had under Victor Piera last season, you know, back-to-back wins at near the end of the season. I feel that at the end of that season, it was going to come down to something at the end, I feel, for Wolves. They're going to probably not do as great the following season because fans were a little bit upset with the ownership with Wolves during halfway through from last season when Wolves were in that bottom three and Ipswich was actually 17th during the halfway period from last season. And, you know, heads turned, of course, on the ownership for Wolves with the fan base. But I feel that might be a little bit more much for them, I think. They're going to stay in the league for another season. So that's why I'm going to go for Wolves to finish 18th and be those final three teams to be relegated to play in the Championship for the following season. And the team will survive the drop will be Leeds United. They're going to be safe. Here's why. Leeds United are a big football club. Big fan base, big tradition. They should be in the Premier League no matter what because the history, you know, the history written itself, of course, Leeds should be in the Premiership because through the years, Leeds were a dominant team in the 90s and also in the early 2000s. And then financial difficulties really played a part in Leeds, dropping down to the lower league. 16 years missing out on Premiership football. Went straight up in 2020 after 16 years when Bielsa came in 2018, brought them up to the Premiership. Then 3 seasons in the top flight. Obviously, Bielsa left in his second season as manager of the Leeds team. I thought Leeds lost their identity a little bit when Bielsa left. And then Jesse Marsch came in. He kept them up safely at the skin of their teeth in that second season. But in the third season was a lot too much for Leeds to handle because they've sacked 3 managers, or had 3 managers in fact, in one season. And then Leeds went down to the Championship and then got to the playoff finals and lost to Southampton 1-0. And then the following season after that, under Daniel Farke, they came champions of the Championship. And now they're back in the big time of the Premier League. They had to make some very good signings as well, of course, in the transfer market. They've signed 2 players from Wolfsburg, such as Lucas Mimenka and also Sebastian Borhu from Wolfsburg, and also Gabriel Gudmundsson, a centre-back from Lille, and also Sean Longstaff, a real experienced player in the Premier League. Very experienced, of course, because he done quite well for Newcastle, being the best holding midfielder in the Newcastle's team for the last few years as well. In the dark times with Newcastle, when before the ownership took over, he was there as their major holding midfielder. And then the ownership took over Newcastle, and then obviously Eddie Howe's manager, and he believed a lot and gave a lot of faith in Sean Longstaff to be a first team midfielder in the Newcastle team. But what a gift for Leeds to get a player like him as a major talking point for him to sign for Leeds United. And also as well, their goalkeeper, they've signed as well Lucas Piri, a very top goalkeeper in Ligue 1 from last season in playing for Lyon. Very decent goalkeeper as well. And that'll be a very, very big challenge, of course, by Mourier and also as well Perry. The 2 goalkeepers will have definitely got to compete with each other, because Mourier was a very good goalkeeper for the Leeds team, but I think that he's not been that popular with Daniel Farke whatsoever, and that's why they've signed Lucas Perry as maybe the goalkeeper to try and become the number 1 for Leeds, maybe so. And they've got some very good players in the Leeds team, even Dan James, a real good winger for Leeds. Obviously left Man United, went to Leeds, and they got relegated that season. And then Daniel James, of course, stayed at Leeds for 3 seasons. Even now, this season, back in the top flight. A very good winger for Leeds. Will be a decent, let's say, core to the team. And also, they've got a few other good players in the team as well. Could keep them in the league as well, like Rondon as well. A very good player. Also Wilfred Gonotto as well, the Italian forward as well. And even Jack Harrison. I don't think Jack Harrison's leaving Leeds. I think that he had 2 loan spells at Everton. And if if Daniel Farke can keep him for the Leeds team for this season, maybe that might be a little bit of experience that Leeds might need to have, of course, to stay in the top flight of the Premier League for this season. So I think that Leeds should be in the Premier League, like it or not. Without Leeds, it feels like boring without Leeds. Leeds are very massive in the 70s under Don Revie, and also in the 90s and the early 2000s. And they are the most, let's say, biggest fan bases in the whole of the UK as well. So the Sleeping Giants, hopefully they can stay in the Premiership. So that's why I'm going to put Leeds in 17th to scrape survival. And let's talk about the team will come 16th in the Premiership. And that's very easy to actually ask that question, because I'm going to go for Sunderland to survive the drop. Granit Xhaka is the most talked about midfielder to sign for Sunderland. He might give away yellow cards left, right and centre in most of Sunderland's games, but that might be crucial for Sunderland to stay in the Premiership for the first season back in the top flight for the first time in 8 years, in fact. 8 years when they last played in the Premiership in 2017. And he'd be a real leader in the dress room for Sunderland Football Club. Also signed as well Samia Adingra as well. He played for Brighton Hove Albion and signed him for 21 million. Simon Adingra to be one of the left wingers for the Sunderland team. A very good signing, of course, for Sunderland to bring him into the squad. But they've lost the goal scorer who sent Sunderland into the Premier League, Tom Watson. The goal he scored against Sheffield United at Wembley Stadium was the goal to send them in the Premiership. A big blow for him because he's leaving Sunderland to join Brighton by 11 million. And that's a big blow, of course, for him to go there. A young 18-year-old, obviously left winger, to actually score the goal to send Sunderland in the Premiership, and now he leaves to join Brighton. And also a big blow for Sunderland to lose Jude Bellingham to go to Borussia Dortmund. You know, following the footsteps of his older brother Jude Bellingham. He used to play for Dortmund a few years back after leaving Birmingham City a few years back, and now he's following the footsteps of his older brother, and they sold him for 32 million, and he was a massive contributor for Sunderland to be in the Premier League in the first place. But it's a shameful to see him go, of course, leaving Sunderland to join Borussia Dortmund in Germany. But the biggest game, the North East Derby, will come back to the Premier League. They got Newcastle, in the exact same league again with Sunderland in the top flight for the first time since 2016. In fact, when Newcastle were the team before the Saudi Arabians took over Newcastle. Newcastle were relegated twice, and Sunderland were the ones who sent Newcastle down twice a few years back before the ownership took over in 2021 under Mike Ashley, the dark days of Newcastle Football Club. And the rivalry is returning back in the top flight of English football, and I'll look forward to that game, of course, when that fixture happens, when they play at St James's Park Stadium, and the Newcastle fixture at home, and also at the Stadium of Light as well for this new season coming up. Will be a massive for these two northeast sides. At least Newcastle have got a local team down the road to them, because before Newcastle had to travel a long way away from Newcastle down to the south and play teams in the Premiership, but now they've got a local team in their area to be in the exact same league as them in the Premier League, and that is Sunderland. And I think that Sunderland will surprise teams this season, especially with Granit Xhaka in that midfield as well, will make the difference for Sunderland to stay in the Premiership. And that's why I'm going to put Sunderland in 16th place. And now my official prediction in 15th place in the Premier League. I am going to go for, as you know, who I'm going to be predicting right now in 15th place. I'm going for West Ham United easily West Ham 15th, because West Ham United, they've signed Callum Wilson. Good signing from Newcastle United. They need a striker, in fact, because they haven't got, Kudus anymore. They've got, obviously, Gerald Bowen they can rely on as well, but they've got to have someone can accompany with Gerald Bowen at West Ham United. And they've got Callum Wilson. That's a good signing, in fact, for a free, because they actually released him during his contract expired during June. That's why West Ham picked up the contract and signed him as one of their strikers during this season, and also signed Kyle Walker-Peters as well from Southampton. Not promising players have signed. They're looking at signing Sterling to West Ham United from Chelsea. Played for us last season for Arsenal, but he wasn't really involved as such when we loaned him from Chelsea, the club he actually played for. And he's not really good anymore, Sterling. I think he's past it. But I think West Ham might be a team that they're looking and interested of signing him for the West Ham United squad, hopefully, going into this season coming up, if that's the case. Or they could buy more players they could sign, maybe some surprises, maybe like Maguire, maybe could be a talk about maybe signing him from Manchester United. There actually was talks about that before, about Maguire going to West Ham United as well. But going back to the team, I don't think they're that good anymore under Graham Potter now. Obviously having David Moyes, great European run in the Conference League, European runs in the Europa League, but they've lost him. Got Julian Lopetegui was manager last season. Got sacked around November. Graham Potter took over as manager. He did okay to keep them in the Premiership, as you expect them West Ham to stay in the Premiership, but they haven't had, let's say, a good form in terms of the transfer spending, and also I haven't seen much about them or do anything this season, to be honest with you, and I feel they're going to be in big trouble some point during the season. West Ham's going to be in the bottom three, I think, because they've lost a few in terms of even Nathaniel as well. He's obviously left West Ham United as well. It was a big loss. Lucas Fabianski left. Also, Danny Ings left as well. Kurt Zuma left also. Few players let go from West Ham is a big blow for them as well in the team, and that's why they need to sign a few defenders. They've got to sign as well in the squad if they can stay in the Premier League. I think they're going to be safe anyway. I'm not going to expect West Ham to be in the relegation zone. I will be relegated in my predictions. I think West Ham have still got a big squad to cope in the Premier League due to the fact that West Ham's got experience in the Premiership through the years. So I will put them in 15th place as my prediction going into the 25-26 season on this video. And now the team I'm predicting to come 14th in the Premier League this season. I'm going for Crystal Palace, easily 14th, because look at them. Look at Palace. They've got a big battle in terms of European football. I know there's a bit of a debate actually now in terms of what's happening with them playing European football, because the courts of the Sporting Authority have now deducted Palace to play in the Conference League for the season coming up. And they meant to play in the Europa League, but they've been demoted down and they replaced Forest to play in the Europa League instead. And a lot of Palace fans were very outraged about this problem, that they have been demoted to play in the Conference League due to the ownership. When you own two clubs in the same UEFA competition, it causes a massive problem in terms of UEFA's issues. But it wasn't Palace's fault, because Palace have never thought they could actually win the FA Cup. Never imagined themselves to win the whole entire thing, and they did that. And a club like Palace to win the FA Cup is a massive boost, not just for the football club, but also for the whole entire community as well. But this is how it will play out this season for Palace. Regardless on them being demoted to the Conference League, or they might get an appeal to play in the Europa League for this season, I don't think Palace will do anywhere great this season, because they've got Europa League to worry about, the Conference League to worry about for this season, and that'll be a massive distraction in terms of Palace's performances in the Premier League. You've got to understand as well that if they lose Eze, if Eze leaves Palace to come and join Arsenal, that'll be also another big loss for the Palace team as well, and that might not. I don't think they're gonna have that. They're gonna have a big distraction. I think they're really gonna have with that European competition now, since they won the FA Cup from last season, and that will be a big blow. I think that will be for Palace not to finish anywhere higher in the top 11 or top 10 of the Premier League, or even punching up to 9th and 8th. I know Palace have never done that as a Premier League team through the years, but they could do that as a team under Oliver Glasner. But they haven't made some decent signings. They only made signings of Walter Benitez, a goalkeeper for PSV Eindhoven, and also signed as well from Ajax as well, Borna Sosa from Ajax for 3 million. And that might be a little bit experience from the Dutch league to sign those two players, especially Benitez. I have seen him on FIFA, was a real top goalkeeper in the PSV Eindhoven team. And not just in FIFA, but I've seen him play a few times in the Champions League as goalie for the PSV team. That's a good signing, though, for Palace, because we know that Dean Henderson. I think there's a bit of competition with Dean Henderson as well, because maybe they might want to bring two experienced goalkeepers in, like Dean Henderson can play in the Premier League games, and then Benitez, experienced in European competitions, might play in the Europa League or Conference League for Palace to try and steady the books a little bit in terms of the squad depth going to this season coming up. But I don't think they're going to be anywhere closer in the top 10. So I'm going to go for them to come 14th in the Premier League as my final official prediction for Palace for this season. And now my prediction of the team will come 13th in the Premier League, and I'm going for Nottingham Forest. They'll finish 13th in the Premiership, and the exact same pattern as Palace. Getting too distracted with European football will be the massive talking point for Forest. What a great, phenomenal season Forest had last season. I never thought that Forest will punch above their weight and really challenge for a European place or even the Champions League from last season. But they did do that. And then they got a qualification at the moment, at this time, in the Europa League. And I've got to say, Chris Wood, he was the top goal scorer in the Forest team last season. He is getting on a little bit now, 34, 33. And can he carry on the goals for this season? That's a massive talking point for him. For Forest, of course, losing Anthony Elanga, a big blow for him to go to Newcastle for 55 million. A big loss for him, or for Forest to lose him to join Newcastle. They have signed two players from Botafogo in Brazil. I think these two players played in the FIFA Club World Cup, and those two players have now joined Forest as well. And also, especially as well, the striking force of Jorge Jesus. I never really heard the guy before, but these are the two Brazilian players that I'm seeing on the screen that have signed from the exact same team. And maybe that could really help Forest, maybe, with those signings. And also Angus Gunn, the goalkeeper for Norwich. They've signed him for a free transfer as well. So they've still got a good team. They've still got a good depth of squad. Obviously, Morgan Gibbs-White was about to leave Forest to go and join Tottenham. But Forest, of course, even put in a massive, massive complaint to Tottenham and a massive lawsuit to Tottenham by the owner, Mariakis, actually put a lawsuit to Tottenham. Very dodgy from the owner, from Forest, but to keep and really pray for Morgan Gibbs-White to stay in the Forest team. And now he is staying because he's signed a contract now for another 4 years as the Forest midfielder. And I know he's very, very dodgy a little bit as the owner for Forest, but if it's going to be enough for Forest, to keep the players to try and be sustainable in the Premier League, why not be selfish? And I don't really have any problem about that whatsoever from what Mariakis is trying to do at Forest, trying to grow Forest into a top team. Look what Forest did in the 70s under Brian Clough. They won 2 European Cups and they were the best team in the 70s and the 80s, and also going into the early 90s as well. They were a top team for us back in the day, once upon a time, and that's what Mariakis and also Nuno Espirito Santo wants to create, a real fortress at the City Ground. They've done that last season, and hopefully this season they could do the exact same thing. So, in terms of the distraction from the Europa League or the Conference League, I think that Forest will obviously do well in that competition, but I think that in the Premier League, I think that Forest will finish in 13th place. Not the team as they were last season. They might drift off a little bit this season, but I do think Forest will be 13th by the end of the season of this campaign, by the end of the 25 and 26 season. And my prediction to come 12th in the Premiership, I'm going to go for Fulham to come 12th in the league. In the last few seasons, all the time, Fulham always find a way to stay in the league, at least by the top 11, the top 12 in the Premier League. Not the team to be the major threats now, to be a yo-yo club as they were before a few years back. Because Marco Silva's been there now as manager for Fulham for a few years, and he's really, let's say, made Fulham a sustainable Premiership club. And I feel they're going to be right down the middle, I think, in terms of top half of the table finish. Very boring, I think, Fulham is a football club. Very boring to watch, but they know how to get the job done every year, is to stay afloat, stay in the Premier League. And they've done that for the last 4 straight seasons. And they've actually made some, not enough transfers whatsoever. Only signed a young goalkeeper from Montpellier. Never really heard of him, really, to be honest with you. They signed him, as I can see on the screen, and they haven't really signed any promising players in the Fulham team. But at the same time, Fulham know how to get the job done. They got Emile Smith-Rowe, top player from last season for Fulham to score a few goals in the Fulham team from last season. You've got also as well for the Fulham team could keep them in the Premiership, as we all know they can do it. Obviously Raul Jimenez, real good striker at Wolves a few years back, and also signed to join Fulham from last season. And even as well, Adama Traore, power, with his legs, very pacey, forward for Fulham, will keep them in the Premiership. Obviously, Bert Leno, very experienced goalkeeper in the times he actually played for Arsenal, and he's a real top German goalkeeper as well, as a German as well himself. And also Alex Iwobi, they've got Andreas Pereira. They've got a real experienced core Premiership team, Not made any signings, but they've got an experienced core team to make Fulham stay afloat in the Premiership. And that's why I'm going to put Fulham in 12th by the end of the Premier League season. And now, 11th position in the Premier League, I am predicting, as I'm going to go for Everton to come 11th place in the Premiership. A very big season for Everton in their new stadium, and also David Moyes, and also the new owners for Everton's first full season owning Everton Football Club as well is a big for Everton for this new season coming up, as Everton has splashed the cash during the summer. They've signed Carlos Aquas from Flamengo in Brazil. They've signed Tamino Barry from Villarreal for 27 million, a forward they've signed to replace Dominic Calvert-Lewin, who actually left and got released for Everton during the June releases. Obviously, he was one of those players got released for Everton Football Club. And also Mark Travis from Bournemouth has signed for 4 million as a backup goalkeeper for Jordan Pickford. They've signed Bayern Munich's defender Adam Azinu from the Moroccan defender from Bayern Munich for 7 million. And also Kieran Dewsbury Hall is a massive signing for Everton from Chelsea for 25 million. And Kieran Dewsbury Hall did not get enough game time whatsoever at Chelsea. He's always been that player, made most appearances for Chelsea, on the bench in the Premier League. Made a lot of appearances in the Conference League last season, and also made a lot of appearances in the FA Cup games as well, but not in the Premier League. And we're not really seen enough of Kieran Dewsbury Hall since signing from Chelsea way back in 2023 from Leicester. Good midfielder for Leicester at the time, and then obviously for him to come and join Chelsea and not get any game time whatsoever, that's a big blow in terms of his development as a football player, because there's a future for him maybe that Everton might see in him. Maybe a call up in the future for England maybe could be, on one of his thoughts maybe so, to come and join Everton Football Club during this new season coming up as well. But a big loss for Everton. They lost Doucouré, real good midfielder for Everton in the dark times of Everton Football Club, who actually kept Everton up in 2023 and 22 season when Doucouré scored that goal against Bournemouth to keep Everton in the Premiership that year. And now he goes and got released with Dominic Calvert-Lewin as one of the releases for Everton at the end of June. And that's a big statement for Everton to get rid of those two players majorly for the Everton team. But we talk about, of course, why did I put Everton in 11th position in the league? Because simply they're going to spend money as well a little bit, because also I forgot to say Jack Grealish is on the talking points as well on leaving Man City Football Club to go and join Everton. There's talks about him, in fact, because Pep Guardiola is not really giving Jack Grealish any game time whatsoever for Man City. So that might be a big signing for Everton if they can even get Jack Grealish from Man City, and that'll be a decent signing, of course, for them. But made some, new contracts they've renewed. Obviously, Gerald Braithwaite, because Braithwaite has a lot of talks in leaving Everton to go and join Manchester United, and a few other clubs were sniffing with Gerald Braithwaite. But he's signed a new extension on his contract, and that is pretty key for him to sign until 2030. Michael Keane renewed his contract as well, and also Idrissa Gana Gueye as well has extended his contract also for Everton. And also the experienced Seamus Coleman, surprisingly, has now extended his contract for one more season as the Everton's right back for the Toffees. So real big business for Everton they've really done during the summer, and I feel that Everton will not be anywhere in the relegation dogfight as they have done in the last few years. I think Everton will be more better off, safer, I think, now as they were before under Sean Dyche, and also before that we're under Frank Lampard. So I don't see any problems of Everton be anywhere in a relegation fight during this season coming up. So I'm going to go for Everton to come 11th in the Premier League. And now the side will come 10th in the Premier League. I'm going to go for mid-table Bournemouth. And there's a big losses for Bournemouth during the transfer market. Losing Dean Huijsen to leave Bournemouth to go to join Real Madrid for 50 million. And also losing Milios Kerkez for 40 million to join Liverpool during the transfer market. But at the same time, they lost Dominic Solanke a few years back to Tottenham, and without him, Bournemouth did very okay. They did last season without Dominic Solanke. They came 9th last season, and they were very close, Bournemouth, for trying to finish in that top half, or nearly close enough for Bournemouth to be in that European football for last season. Could have qualified for the Conference League almost, and they drift off a little bit at the end of that season. But this season, Bournemouth will be in the exact same position as they were last season. Still got a good squad of players, for example as well, Evelisson up front, the striker, the Brazilian up front, scored some good goals last season for Bournemouth, Evelisson for Bournemouth Football Club. Also as well, Antonio Semenyo, very good forward, also scored a few goals through the last few seasons for Bournemouth. Hopefully they can keep him as well, because I feel that he's staying on actually at Bournemouth now for because he extended his contract for a couple of seasons as well. So there's a lot of talks on bigger clubs actually signing Antonio Semenyo to join their side, like Chelsea for example. But luckily Bournemouth will actually keep him for this season, and I don't really see a difference in this Bournemouth side despite them losing 2 top defenders to 2 top teams. I feel that Bournemouth will be very okay in the top 10, and if you keep Andoni Areola, and if they invest money as well as they're doing right now, the new stadium, they're trying to upgrade a new stadium now, and maybe a new training ground also, facility as well, they're going to be okay. I think they're going to be, in terms of being an established Premier League club for years to go by. And I don't see any problems on Bournemouth to be anywhere in the bottom half of the table or anywhere closer in the relegation zone. So I think Bournemouth will be in the top 10 by the end of this season in the 2025 and 2026 season in my predictions. And now the team will be in 9th position in my predictions. I'm going to go for Brighton Hove Albion to finish 9th place in the Premier League. And they made some good signings, let's say, some overseas players, such as, for example, Olivier Bajige from PSV Eindhoven, if I pronounce that name right. And they've signed Korean right winger Yoon Do-young as well for 2 million. Maybe he might be making appearances for Brighton this season. And also that goal scorer who sent Sunderland into the Premier League, and that is Tom Watson, is signed for Sunderland for 10 million. And maybe that goal he scored for Sunderland might give maybe Thomas Herzog, give him a real sniff, maybe a chance to play in the first team for Brighton this season. But if you look at the team, of course, about who they've sold actually, in fact, they've sold João Pedro to Chelsea during the transfer market. A big loss for Brighton to lose João Pedro. They've lost Simon Adingra to Sunderland for 21 million as well. But at the same time, Brighton have got a very solid squad as always. Brighton are never that team who struggles anywhere in the bottom of the table or anywhere in the relegation battle through the last few years. And their identity now is to be established top half team in the years to go by. You know, Lewis Dunk, great defender, loyal player for the Brighton team as the captain for the squad. You also got as well for Brighton, obviously, Danny Welbeck, still playing at the age of 35 years of age. James Milner as well. He's getting on a little bit, James Milner as well, but he's staying on for another year now. He's 37 years of age, and Brighton give him the belief as the player to might make a few appearances for Brighton despite his age as well in the Premier League elite level. Also, Mitoma is staying in for another season for Brighton. Mitoma's a very good midfielder, of course. Very, let's say, talented in that midfield position. But in my honest perspective about Brighton, in fact, to have these players in the team and not lose a lot of players, maybe Adingra and maybe lose as well João Pedro, I feel that they'd be okay. I think they're going to be, of course, to be in that European races, I think, Brighton. But I think they might miss out on qualification in the Conference League. So I'm going to go for Brighton to be the 9th position team in my predictions for this season coming up. And now my prediction in 8th position, I'm going to go for Aston Villa, because I know Unai Emery has got his eyes now focused on winning the Europa League, because this is a massive opportunity now for Villa to do it this season, because the Europa League football now is a lot different now in comparison to before, because there's a lot of, let's say, lesser, stronger teams in that competition. Look at what Spurs did last year when they won the Europa League. I think Villa and Unai Emery has got that aim of Europa League football to win for this whole season coming up. And I don't really think Villa will be very, let's say, contending in the top 4, the top 5 to qualify for the Champions League, because you've got to understand the squad depth. They've got a big squad, but you've got to understand as well, a lot of teams like Spurs and United will strengthen during this transfer market as well. The established top 6 will make it a lot harder for Villa as well. But they haven't lost any players in the transfer market. It's probably the good news for Aston Villa to not lose any key players in their squad. They have signed a player from Feyenoord, Redmond as well. They've signed for Feyenoord. They've signed also a goalkeeper from Brest, Biziot as the goalkeeper for the Aston Villa team. Not much of a promise for him. And also signed Ivan Gezand, the Ivory Coast central forward for Aston Villa as well. But big losses could happen as well for Villa, because recording this video right now, Ollie Watkins is still playing for Aston Villa. There are talks on teams like Newcastle, Man United are looking to sign Ollie Watkins as their striker for their team before the transfer window closes in August. And that might be a big blow for Villa to lose a player like him. They've got Leon Bailey, could maybe cover for the departure of Ollie Watkins, maybe up front for the team. And, that new signing maybe, even Gaziand as well, might be a promising striker through the years. They got Rodgers as well. Morgan Rodgers might really be promising for Aston Villa. They also got Malin as well. The Dutch forward as well might be also another key player to cover also for the departure of Ollie Watkins also for the team. So I think they've got ideas, Villa, to really strengthen their squad. And also I feel that Villa will not be, as to say, distracted. I think they're going to be in Premier League, where they're going to finish in terms of results. I think they're going to lose a few games. I think they're not going to be anywhere in that top 6 or top 5 whatsoever. And I think that Unai Emery will worry about the Europa League. And I think Villa will finish in 8th position in the Premiership, outside of the European places, as my prediction of this season. And now my prediction for the team to come 7th place in the Premier League. I'm going to go for Newcastle, and here's why. If they lose Isak, then Newcastle will be out of the top 6 of the Premier League. They'll be finishing the top 7, they'll be, if they lose Isak in the transfer window. If he stays, I'll probably put Newcastle up to 5th, maybe so, or 4th. But this season, you haven't got a striker like Isak. I don't really think Newcastle will even be in that top 5, because you've got to look at other teams around them, like United strengthened. No European football also for United. Spurs as well. We know that they're in the Champions League also for this season, but they have strengthened their squad a lot more, also top them. You've got to understand about that as well. Chelsea strengthened their squad. Obviously, City will obviously finish above Newcastle, despite, obviously that's going to happen. Arsenal, obviously stronger than Newcastle. Even Liverpool, stronger than Newcastle. But I don't think they're going to be anywhere in the top 5. If they lose Isak, that's game over for Newcastle, personally. But in the bright side for Newcastle, signings, of course, they've signed as well. Anthony Elanga for at least 55 million from Nottingham Forest. For 55 million is a big, big transfer for Newcastle to sign Anthony Elanga from Premier League rivals of Nottingham Forest. And also looking about who they got rid of already. They got rid of Lloyd Kelly to leave Newcastle to join Juventus. Big signing for Juventus, though, to sign Lloyd Kelly as one of their signings as well. Sean Longstaff's left Newcastle to join Leeds. Dubravka has left as the goalkeeper for Newcastle, now to join Burnley as their major keeper now after losing James Trafford to Man City. But they've signed Aaron Ramsdale as a loan player, because we know that obviously Nick Pope obviously can't really use his feet as such as a goalkeeper, but Ramsdale, however, can use his feet a lot better when he controls the ball, when he actually has the ball on his feet. He's very confident, he is, on the ball, Ramsdale as a goalkeeper. That's why Newcastle went for him instead, but only on loan, no. Only an option to buy, hopefully, for next season, if he ends up doing well for Newcastle during his time as a Newcastle goalkeeper. There are talks, maybe, that there's rumours of Jack Grealish could be joining Newcastle as well. Might be a big signing for them if they could actually have him to be in the books. If he ends up leaving Man City, it will be a decent signing. But they can strengthen the squad, but they have to strengthen the striking force, is probably the most core, the worry about the most. Unless they can use Joelinton maybe to be that cover, to be that striker for Newcastle if Isak ends up leaving to join Liverpool in the transfer market. Because again, now let's say him leaving, he wants to leave. He's handed a transfer request. He wants to leave Newcastle and join Liverpool, the Premier League champions. And that'll be a massive blow if he ends up losing him. And that's why I put Newcastle out of the top 6 in 7th position at the end of this predictions of this video here, as I predicted Newcastle to come 7th place. And now we are talking about the big 6. The top 6 are the teams that I think will be in the top 6 going into this season. I think Man United will be 6th in the Premier League in my predictions. And forget about the turmoil, forget about the poor season United had last season, losing Erik ten Hag in September. They got in Ruben Amorim after that. Didn't do very, very well. He didn't do, personally, Ruben Amorim as manager for the last 7 months as manager for Man United during his halfway as the coach for the halfway through the season. And then they got into the Europa League final and lost to Spurs 1-0. And that was probably not really Ruben Amorim's fault, because he hasn't really had a chance on what players he wants, because in the January transfer market, you can't really sign many players, realistically so. And they had to get rid of the deadwood of players like Rashford, and, losing him, and, trying to get rid of, Rashford especially is probably the big one for United. And, losing maybe, Victor Lindelof as well, and trying to lose players that Ruben Amorim not really need for Manchester United. And that's why it's very, very good to see that he's trying to rebuild United a little bit his own way, and he signed obviously Chana, decent signing from Wolves. That was a very, very big signing for United to sign him from Wolves, the forward for them. He signed obviously Brian Abremo from Brentford, big signing for United to sign him, and then they signed yesterday Benjamin Sesko. And even Arsenal are looking at signing Sesko. If Gyökeres went to United, we would have got Sesko instead. But when Gyökeres now decides to join Arsenal, now it looks like Xisco will be Man United's major striker to go for, and they went for him as their striker they've signed from Red Bull Salzburg or RB Salzburg as their signing. And since they've got Xisco, I think they're going to be okay. I think they're going to be United. You know, this will be Ruben Amorim's first full season as Manchester United's manager. And you got to look at the team as well. Bruno Fernandes, captain, leader. Would he step up this season? He should do, really, as he's the captain. Still a deadwood for Man United. You also got, let's say, De Ligt as well. Can he play well with Ruben Amorim as well? Also, Mazzari as well, defender for Man United. Could he obviously do great as well and, really play in Ruben Amorim's, formations and that in the team? He probably should do. And also the biggest talking point as well, Andre Onana, the goalkeeper, because he is shocking goalkeeper. Makes so many mistakes as goalkeeper during last season. He conceded so many goals, and I cannot believe why United actually kept Andre Onana. That's the biggest talking point. Is he going to really, let's say, really just not really be arrogant and be cocky or anything and that, and just like really, let's say, really work hard as a goalkeeper, not to, be as making mistakes or making howlers? Would he really just prove to football fans that he can really, let's say, be a good goalkeeper for this season? That's the biggest talking point for United. Can Onana be the top keeper and make some good saves, not mistakes this season? And could he mature as a goalkeeper in the team? That would be a major talking point for United also for him during this season. Also, Garnacho, talked about him leaving Man United, of course. A lot of teams are looking about signing Garnacho overseas, abroad. And there's some European teams are looking at signing Garnacho as one of their signings as well. We know that he will probably be the one who will be leaving during this summer transfer window. Obviously, Luke Shaw, not really good defender anymore now. Very poor, and he's one of the deadwood players also for Man United. Also, could he get game time? Could Amorim give him a chance? Maybe that might be interesting to see if Luke Shaw could actually end up getting into the first team, because last season is very shocking. He was very shocking. He even gave away a goal to Spurs in that Europa League final as well. That responsible he was from that moment. Casemiro is another player to talk about as well. Will he stay? Because there's talked about Casemiro leaving Man United to go to Saudi Arabia as well. And that'll be also a massive talking point if he stays for another season at Manchester United. But overall, without no European football, there's no excuses for Man United to, be in the bottom half of the table again. I was thinking that maybe before I'd done this prediction, I had a feeling that Man United might be in the top 10 or maybe 12th or 11th position in my predictions. But since they've signed Benjamin Xisco now, I feel that that might be a real breakthrough. To sign him from Leipzig might really help maybe United to try and do a lot better comparison to last season after coming 15th in the Premier League, very shockingly. So that's why I put United in 6th place in the Premiership in my predictions, due to signing Xisco as their striker going into this season. And now the team will come 5th in the Premier League. I'm going to go for Tottenham to come 5th. And Spurs did very well. I hate to say this, to be fair, about this, but you got to give them credit. They won the Europa League, they did. And that was a very big win for them to win their first ever major trophy for the first time since 2008. Is a big achievement for Spurs, despite through the years not winning anything, bottoming trophies every single year, and now 17 years later they've finally held a trophy, and that is the Europa League. And now they've qualified now for the UEFA Champions League now for this season. But you got to admire Spurs a little bit, even though I'm an Arsenal supporter and I really hate Spurs so much. But they have made some good signings, of course, Tottenham. A big statement Spurs have done under their new manager, Thomas Frank, now left Brentford to join Tottenham. They've signed a few good players like, Matthias Tell from Bayern Munich, very good forward as well. That might be a very good signing for them. Also, Kudus, they signed from obviously West Ham United. Another big signing for him to join from West Ham down the road to them. That's a good signing, of course, from Tottenham. But also loans as well. They've got in Paulinho from Bayern Munich as well. A defensive midfielder will be a very good signing also for Tottenham to actually bring him in on loan. No, maybe an option to buy hopefully during next season if he does well for Tottenham. But players who left the team like Son Heung-min, 10 years service in the Tottenham's team, came to an end, of course, as he's now left Spurs to join Los Angeles FC. And also Pierre-Emile Højbjerg has now left Spurs to join Marseille. And that's another loss for Tottenham. But at the same time, Spurs mean business after winning the Europa League now. They want to try and go all out and try and challenge maybe in the Champions League for this season and also in the Premier League also. And to do that, you've got to invest. And Spurs have done that all right, they've done so far under Thomas Frank. Not obviously, but still a long way to go yet till the transfers end, of course, in the start of September. And maybe more business could happen for Tottenham from now until then. And that's why I'm going to put Spurs in 5th place. They could qualify for the Champions League for the following season if any English teams get into the semi-finals for this season's Champions League. I really think we probably will do, though. And I think that Spurs are going to be likely to qualify for another season in the Champions League in the top 5 in 5th place as my prediction going into this season, going up for the Premiership. And now the side that I'm going to put in 4th in the Premier League. I'm going to go for Manchester City to be 4th in the Premiership. And last season, Man City was shocking. They were losing a few games in the Champions League, a few games as well in the Premier League. Even took it to the final day of the season to try and qualify for another season in the Champions League. And they did that on the final day of the season. Pep Guardiola is getting tired. I can tell Pep Guardiola doesn't want to be there no more because he looks tired, he does. He looks like he ain't the manager as he was before when he was successful at Man City, when he won Premier League after Premier League after Premier League after Premier League, and he's won everything he's won to accomplish at Man City. He's won the Champions League, he won the League Cup, he's won the FA Cup, he's won everything he's won for Manchester City Football Club, but now he's falling, he's really dropping, I feel that now. He's really, they say, it's getting too much for Pep, I think, now, because he's been there now for a long period of time, long time, as the manager of Man City. And I can really see he's getting very tired. Like Jurgen Klopp, for example, he was very tired during his end of his tenure as manager for Liverpool. That's why he announced that he'll be leaving on that season. And he did do that. And I think that Man City will probably end up struggling this season to get into the Champions League. I think they'll still get top 4 because their squad is ridiculously strong. That's definitely going to happen. But I think Pep Guardiola isn't the manager as he was before. I feel that he'll either probably get sacked, maybe, or he could end up taking it to the end of the season and announce that I'll be leaving Man City. That could happen. I think this will be his last season manager for Man City Football Club. He's took it now for 10 years. Long time. And nowadays, managers don't last that long anymore now. Like Wenger and Ferguson was managers at Arsenal United for the last 20, 30 years. But this generation of football, and it's very different comparison to it was before with Wenger and Ferguson as managers for a long period of time for their football clubs. And I think Pep Guardiola has took it too far. I think he's took it now as manager for Man City. And I feel that Man City will really fall down the cracks. Could not win the FA Cup final. They couldn't win against Crystal Palace. They could not even beat Palace in the final of the FA Cup. Could not win any trophies whatsoever all season last campaign as well. Was a massive blow. But the only player could even help them this season will definitely be Erling Haaland if he's fit enough. He will be the real, let's say, most talked about striker for Man City during this season. The man could go forward and try and score the goals to help Man City and carry Man City in that top 4. And even as well in the midfield as well, Bernardo Silva. maybe as well Phil Foden as well. Those players will really be the major players also, as every year those players are major, also could help out and help maybe Man City on, carrying themselves into that top four of the Premier League. And that's what I'm going to put them in fourth due to that reason. They're not the team as they were before though, Man City, but they're going to be in the Champions League places. So that's why I'm going to go fourth place, Man City, as my final prediction in this Premier League campaign on this video. The team will come third in the Premier League. I'm going to go for the best club in the world, Chelsea. Chelsea will be third position in the Premier League because they did very well. They won the Conference League. They won the FIFA Club World Cup in the summer. They made some very good signings as well during the transfer market, as they signed Liam Delap from Ipswich, because on his contract at Ipswich, he got a release clause. If Ipswich got relegated, he can end up joining another Premier League team, and that's why he joined Chelsea for 30 million, by the way. They signed João Pedro from Brighton, another striker for the Chelsea team, from Brighton Hove Albion, of João Pedro. Big losses for Chelsea. They've lost, obviously, Kepa. We all probably expect Kepa to leave because Kepa's not getting any game time at Chelsea anymore as he used to be. Also, as well, Mandzukic is now signed for Arsenal as well for 48 million. Good signing for us to try and get a right winger. Is he good enough though for Arsenal? That's the question. Signing Mandzukic from Chelsea will be a big question mark, of course, for us. And even getting rid of João Felix to sell him to go and play for Al Nassr for 26 million, and also Kieran Drisby Hall's now gone to Everton. I discussed about a little bit earlier ago on the prediction about Everton for this season, and that's a big not big loss, but we expect those players to end up leaving anyway because they're not that very good, obviously, for Chelsea, and that's why Chelsea have decided to try and look big in the picture and get rid of the players they don't really need and bring players they might need, and they've done that quite successfully well. Now the biggest talking point this season about Cole Palmer. Will he be the man to score the goals as he has done from last season? He's a key player for Chelsea, and I don't think he's going to slow down this season. He might be, earning a lot of money. He might be, let's say, the pressure might be on Cole Palmer because he's a very young player, but he's a very mature player and a player that he's really he will be a major player for a long time for Chelsea. If they end up keeping him for a few years, he'll definitely be the one to try and carry Chelsea, of course, or be that major key talisman for Chelsea. I think he'll definitely stay up in terms of his ability. I don't think he will be the one to be sloppy or, maybe injured or anything like that during this season. I think he'll be fine, and I think he'll bag 20 goals this season for Chelsea, and I think he'll be the biggest responsibility for Chelsea to really push them now up towards maybe a chance on competing with the Premier League title, because I think they could do it still. Chelsea, they could probably still challenge it, but I don't think Chelsea will probably win it though, because you've got Arsenal have strengthened a lot, and also Liverpool have also strengthened a lot. So that's why I've put Chelsea in third place, despite Chelsea winning the FIFA Club World Cup way back from last month. So I'm going to put third place for Enzo Maresca's Chelsea in third as my prediction for them in this season's Premier League predictions. And now the decider's been made. Who do I predict to win the Premier League, and who do I predict to come second in the Premiership? It's going to be a tough one though, because Liverpool are strengthened their squad. They've signed some very good players and invested a lot of money during this transfer market. For Arsenal, however, we spent on the striker, Gyökeres. We spent on a few players in the transfer market also. It's decent for us as well to sign the players we've got. But who will win the league? That's the question. I don't want to be very biased about this, but I'm going to go Arsenal to win the league. And I know a lot of people are going to start, questioning me about it. You're so biased about Arsenal winning the Premier League, they end up bottoming it, coming second every single year. But hear this. If we don't win the league this season, Arteta has to go. He has to leave. Because it's been 3 or 4 seasons, we always come second every single year. This season, he has to do it. He has to win a trophy for us. It might not just be the Premier League trophy, maybe the FA Cup or the League Cup. Something this season, we have to go win something. That's why I'm going to put Arsenal first, and I'm going to put Liverpool in second place. Let's talk about Liverpool. Big loss during the summer as Diogo Jota died from a car accident. And maybe the players are probably, of course, maybe grieving a lot about the loss of Diogo Jota. And that might play a part in terms of maybe the mental side of things, maybe, that Arsenal might get over the line and win the whole entire Premiership. That's the question why I think Liverpool might drop. But good signings as well. They're signing Jeremy Frimpong from Bayern Leverkusen. They brought Ritz from Leverkusen. 2 signings from Leverkusen. They signed the guy Milios Kerkez from Bournemouth. They signed him. They signed Hugo Ekeketa from Frankfurt. Good signing as well. But Arsenal, however, Gyökeres, striker, did very well for Sporting Lisbon during, of course, last season. We signed also another top player as well of Martin Zubimendi. Good signing. We signed him. We signed a Chelsea Madueke from Chelsea. We signed him as well. So we made some good business as well in the transfer window. We invest a lot of money. And even we got Declan Rice in that holding midfield. We have Saka down that wing. We've got Odegaard. We've got a very good team we've got. I mean, there's no excuses. We're not going to win the league. Defensively, we're very good now. We've got Saliba, Gabriel, Ben White as well. We've got some very good defenders at the back as well. Same with Liverpool. Virgil van Dijk's going to probably slow down a little bit now because he's getting older now. Salah, for example, for Liverpool, will get a lot slower now because he's getting a little bit older now. And plus, they extended his contract for 2 years as well. Might be, let's say, a big, let's say, blow, I think, for Liverpool to actually renew Salah's contract and Van Dijk's contract because they ain't going to be the player as they were a few years back. They're not going to be the players as they were a few years back or even last season. I don't think they're going to be the same players as they were before. And that's going to be a big blow, I think, for Liverpool to go and win the league for another season. That's why I'm putting Arsenal to go and win the Premier League. Psychologically, they're obviously grieving over Diogo Jota and also Mo Salah, and Virgil van Dijk will slow down a little bit, and that might cause problems in terms of maybe less goals maybe in games, maybe in crucial times Salah might end up not doing great in terms of positions in the Liverpool team on maybe scoring the goals or trying to be, his pace might drop a little bit more as he's getting a little bit older now. That might play a part on Salah as well, definitely for this season. And that's why I'm putting Arsenal to go win the Premier League. A lot of people might laugh at me saying that, you're bottlers, second place FC, all the time. But you got to understand, in football, in terms of what Arteta spent the money, we have to do it. And if we don't win the league this season, he's getting sacked. That's it. End of discussion about that. Don't win any trophies this season, you're sacked. And that's what I'm putting it down to if Arsenal don't win the Premier League this season. So I do think Arsenal will be champions. And I feel that after 22 years without no league title, that comes to an end in 2026. And Arsenal will be the winners of the Premier League. But that's all for the whole video here on my Premier League predictions for the 2025 and 2026 season. If you like this video, please give it a like And also subscribe on my YouTube channel on TGI Football if you want more of coverages of predictions that I do every single week on this channel on Premier League match day predictions before the games kick off. Every single weekend I'll do predictions for the Champions League, predictions for the Premier League games. I'll do that as well on this YouTube channel. So apart from that, guys, thank you guys for watching. That's all for the video, and I hope you enjoyed the whole football predictions. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoy the whole Premier League season coming up for next week. Have a good one.